Sunday, 15th January 2024. In this evening's first show of 24, I just have to get a frog in my throat, don't I? We're catching up on all the action since the last pod of 23, including Port Vale, Lincoln, Burton, Notts Forest, and culminating in Saturday's 7th home win on the bounce against Exeter. We'll also be briefly discussing the ins and outs of the January transfer window, the FA Cup, and the BSM Trophy and frisk-gate. I'm John Aspinall on this Seaside's podcast, Extra Time Show, the Magnificent 7. Good evening, all you Blackpool fans out there. Welcome back to the Seasiders podcast. This is an Extra Time Show, so we've got so many games to cover. We haven't done one for a bit, titled The Magnificent 7, and we have the Magnificent 4 with us this evening. An OG podcast I put out on Twitter. The original crew of Matt, Nick, Tim, and myself. Matt, let's come to you first. Good to have you back, mate.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you all. Yeah. Been a while, but I thought I'd step into the 2024 breach and see what glad tidings we can bring to the start of the year. Or something like that.
Tim, it's a very positive title, isn't it? The Magnificent 7, 7 wins on a bounce. However, there is...
Incredibly positive, actually, for you, John.
Even though we are on that excellent home record, there is a general malaise around the place, isn't there?
Well, I think it's the yin and the yang of our home and away form that's the cause of that. It's incredible, really, the stark difference between the two. And if we didn't, to be honest, if we'd had a bang average away form, we'd be right up there, wouldn't we? We'd be up there in the sort of 4th or 5th, if even with 4 or 5 away wins. So, yes, it's a conundrum, I think they call it,
to say the least. Nick, a countdown conundrum, a P&E crisis, if you will. Didn't make any sweets this week because those bastards won, didn't they? But hey ho, we can't let them.
No, good evening, everyone. It's good to be back, and like you say, there's plenty to cover. I think we're starting with Port Vale. We'll make that quite a quick one because there wasn't a lot to talk about from a positive point of view, was there?
I've just watched back all the highlights on the official YouTube channel just to refresh my memory. The third goal was particularly shit, just a defensive balls up. But just on the stream, Nemo says, "Can we please have a moment and reflect for King Kenny?" Tim, you must be devastated at this news. If it
has it actually been announced now? We're not relying on his girlfriend with her teasing. Do you know she reminds me a little bit of that? Do you remember the old AVFTT days with Valderrama's hair salon, who used to come out with these little teases but wouldn't quite tell you what was going on? It's felt a bit about that, like that over the last couple of days, having to read into what she's inferring. So has it officially been announced now?
No,
I don't think so. I think so.
He's started following the Thai football team's page, hasn't he? Unless it's somebody doing some shenanigans with social media, which is also eminently possible. But yeah, to be honest, I'm a bit. I said this on the last show, didn't I? When you've got a good player, and let's be fair, he's probably been our most consistent performer this year, then you want them to play until they're ready, until they actually go. We seem to have this thing where when somebody's going out, they just stop playing for us. And it weakens the team. It happened with Bowler. It's happened again here. I'm not, I don't know what's going on with Ekpateta either, quite what's happening there. But, he could have been playing for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And so unless there's something really we don't know about, it's a bit disappointing because I'd have liked to see him play. And then, if he wants to move nearer to home, I don't blame him, It's one of them things, and you move on and you say he's done a good job for us for 3 or 4 years. And most certainly he was one of the architects of us getting promoted in the first place. Perhaps he didn't have the greatest time in the Championship as a player for us, but he started well, if I remember rightly, when he was playing with Wintle. I think he's done a fantastic job this year. So I think overall he's been a great signing, and it's just find it a bit disappointing when it peters out like this, and then you never see him again. So, and as the honorary president of his fan club, I'm going to have to start following Thai football, I think, aren't I?
I think what's disappointing is point of view. He's always been 100%er, hasn't he? I think, whatever limitations he's got, he's always, I think, pretty much given his all. And then just to seemingly sort of tail off like he is or whatever at the moment, it just seems a bit out of character and a bit odd, really. And yeah, it's just a bit weird, like you say, about how the club are dealing with it, how he's dealing with it, and we don't know how to deal with it as a result. So yeah, all a bit strange, really.
Well, it's so there's like a cloak of secrecy around everything, and why you can if listen, you've had a player who's given 3 years, nearly 4 years decent service, 3.5 at least. Anyway, I think he came in the January, didn't he? He come in the January of the promotion year. Was he there all year? Can't remember now. Anyway, so it's either 3.5 or 3 years, and a bit of honesty. I mean, this is what's going on. And then he can have a proper send off, but it's like he's probably isn't allowed to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
His girlfriend's saying probably more than she should say.
What is she actually saying? I've not seen any of this. What?
Well, she's one of these influencers. So to be fair, I think she's got like 300,000 or 400,000 followers on Instagram or something, and she's sort of saying, "Oh, there's a big." They're getting married, but she said there's another big thing happening beforehand, but I can't say at the moment, but I will be able to say shortly, and then you'll understand why I haven't been able to say anything. And it's all, but it seems to be inferring a move, and the fact that she can't say anything appears to relate to the fact that things haven't, the I's haven't been dotted, the T's haven't been crossed at the club. But yeah,
if you're Kenny, you can't be happy about that, can you?
No, well, I think I only watched a little bit of it that somebody linked on AVFTT yesterday, and it was like go to 3 minutes 40, and you can hear her talking about it, because it's not all about that. It's mainly her other stuff, but yeah, I mean, it was fairly clear from that they're moving somewhere.
Mm.
But you're still guessing, because nothing is actually said. But yeah, I would much rather, if he was going, you could say like middle of November, whenever all this nonsense started, play till January. We'll bring somebody in for when you leave, and you go with, all with our thanks and whatever. And I think most certainly we've dropped points with him not playing. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that if he'd been playing over the last 6 weeks, we'd have got more points than we have. So on all sorts of levels, it just doesn't sit right. And again, there may be more to it than we know. But maybe there's something gone in the background. But during this period, he's gone jetting off somewhere, got engaged, and girlfriends putting all sorts of, how do you describe them? Positive Instagram posts up. They're not negative. So I don't know. Incredibly disappointing, though.
What an informative and substantive channel she has too. Not all your focus.
It's not.
What's that word mean, Tim?
Laced with irony, I think that is. That little comment by Matt there.
By Mitch. I'm just going to tip my hat to Andy Porter.
Yeah, I've spotted that one.
As Tim was now claiming to follow Thai football, following Kenny's moves, he will become Timmy Thai Scarves.
We could organise a trip over there, couldn't we,
Tim?
for a week in Phuket and go and watch a couple of games while we're there. It's a bit better than go to Germany or Spain, isn't it?
Was it Timmy 10 Scarves, or what was your previous name?
I've had all various ones, depending on how many scarves I've managed to collect.
Thailand Tim Scarves, another one.
Very, very good.
Lovely stuff. Dennis, for fuck's sake, he's no Houlihan, just an average League One midfielder. Move on. What have you got to say about that, Tim?
Leggy League One donkey. Is that what Dennis is trying to suggest?
Yeah.
Well, listen, he's not a Houlihan because he doesn't play in Houlihan's position, does he? He's. I think if we ignore the sort of class of 2010, I think he's up there with what some of the better defensive midfielders that we've had in the team in to be honest, in all the time I've watched us.
And he's been really coming back to the fore this season as well, which is kind of doubly disappointing because he's recapturing his arguably the best form of his career.
To be fair to Dennis, he's a good League One central midfield player. I think he was average in the Championship, but I think it depended on who he played with in the Championship as well. I mentioned when he was playing with Winkle, I thought he did pretty well, but maybe he lost his way a bit. Maybe just not quite got the pace for the Championship and you know the quick feet you need. But I thought the year we got promoted he was superb, and I thought he was showing exactly the same attributes this year as well. And all I can say is I think unless we bring somebody in, he is going to be a big loss. I don't rate Norman anywhere near the way he's been playing this season.
Norman Norburn.
Norman Norburn.
Norman Norburn. Sounds like a World War One.
Yeah, Charlie Charles. I was going to say we're going to be one song down on the terraces as well, or the stands as well, aren't we now? That's another one we can scrub off, you know. So,
and Matt makes a good point there. You know, he did seem to have the ability to control the tempo of a game, you know, and there's always been players. There's always been fans who don't seem to like him. I don't quite get it. I've never quite understood it because I always think he gives. If there's a weakness in his game, it is that he doesn't score enough. But he probably still scores more than most other of our central midfield players do. Overall, you know, I always seem to like nick the odd one, but he wasn't quite as prolific, I think, as he could have been. But that wasn't really his game. His game was all about shoring it up and moving the ball about. And I thought he did it really well.
You know what's going to happen now? He's going to sign a new extended contract tomorrow and be back in the team for the rest of the season.
We'll have a public holiday in Port Vale, won't we? If that
it's all gone downhill since he moved away from my mum and dad next door, but one, didn't he?
Yeah.
So
it's never been the same, has it?
Never been the same. Never been the same. You know. Interestingly, 2 doors down from them now, or well, up to 2 weeks ago, was Fleetwood's assistant manager, who I don't know what his name is. So there is a rental opportunity there if he needs to backtrack.
I think A-Mac's got it right as well. He needed to go back blonde as well. You know, I think stand out on the pitch more with blonde hair.
I think his lifestyle guru girlfriend advised he go brunette. Oh, speaking of Fleetwood, Charlie's manager now, there, isn't he? Cracking start, played 3, lost 3.
I think he's trying to turn around the proverbial oil tanker, that, isn't it?
Definitely.
I think they're on.
Okay, let's recap, if we must, the last games of 23, which were Port Vale. Obviously, we lost 3-0. Lincoln. How do we describe these 2-0 wins, Matt? Was it
functional? Is how I described it.
Yeah.
Functional 2-0 win. And you've got any comment on these particular games?
Well, I think Port Vale, you know, you could sort of see as the game went on the way it was going, and I think I'm not in the Critchley out camp at all, but I think my main gripe is in these away games where you can see it's not working, we don't seem to be capable of doing anything different, or there isn't an instruction to do anything different. And, you know, we just keep going the way we're going without really building up any pressure or many chances. And inevitably, we end up getting beaten by, you know, let's be honest, some average teams. The further are down the league they are, the more we seem to struggle. We just don't seem to be able to go there and impose our game on them at all. And we don't change it. There isn't a plan B. And like Tim said before, you know, even if we were just getting a draw here and there, it'd make such a difference. Then at the moment, it's just thank God we're, even though it isn't spectacular, we are functional at home and we're getting those wins, because if we weren't so good at home, we'd be floundering firmly in mid-table.
Dead air is a crime. Click the wrong button then.
I think what it does, just picking up on Nick's point as well, I think what it probably does illustrate, and I know we've said it before, is that Critch seems to be a decent coach, but it does seem to come unstuck a bit sometimes, and I think it's when it is about making changes. When things are going right on the pitch, we seem, at home in particular, we seem to have a recipe that gets results. But when we go away and there's a different dynamic at play, you do have to do different things. You do have to switch things about. If we switch things about, it tends to be just putting another player in the same position of the player that's coming off, and therefore it's a rinse and repeat. They might play a little bit better, but I can't think of many times this season, probably I'm thinking Fleetwood away might be one example where we've actually made substitutions and we've come out and played a different way. I just think we always look like, away from home, we always look like we're playing exactly the same. And sometimes it works, as it did at Barnsley and did at Portsmouth. But for the majority of the time, it's incredibly predictable. And we struggle, and we particularly seem to struggle against the poorer, what you would think are the poorer teams in the division. I mean, if you look at the statistics for Burton and Port Vale, I think Burton hadn't won since October. I think, and Port Vale's manager was on the verge of getting sacked before that game. So we almost seem to, the better the standard of the team away, the more chance we've got of actually performing. Where you go down all those teams at the bottom and look at the games away from home, you've got you look at Fleetwood, Burton, Exeter. Charlton wasn't so bad, to be fair. Cambridge, and we've been shocking at all of them, haven't we?
Mm.
Fleetwood shocking for half a game, and then not so bad for the rest. But Port Vale a little bit higher up. We've got Bristol coming up this weekend. You can see straight away which way that's going.
Well, I mean, I'm going to Bristol on Saturday for my sins, and I see it as possibly. I said earlier to a guy that we know that I just said I think it's probably our most important away game of the season in a way, because it's the first away game I think of 2024, other than certainly in the league. And you just feel as though if they don't turn this corner and this mindset and God knows what else that's going on with our away form, I think we're going to have to somehow pull something out of the fire to get anywhere near the playoffs. And it has to start with an away win at Bristol Rovers. And, they're not pulling up any trees or anything. They're a decent outfit, but nothing major. They've had their problems. So, there is something wrong with the way that we're playing away from home. And it has to be down to the manager, unfortunately, because there is no plan B when things don't go right. There is no change of formation, which was so different to the first time that Critch was with us. He would change every week, not just the personnel, but the formation on the pitch, whether it be 4-3-3, 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it. Every week there would seem to be changes all the time. Whereas we seem to be just sort of rigid and not so fluent anymore. We just seem to be sort of passive in our play a lot of the times. And away from home, you can afford almost to take a bit more of a risk, I think, when you're away from home. The pressure's on you at home, yet weirdly we've won 10 out of 15 or whatever it is. So yeah, there just needs to be a change, hopefully at the weekend, and maybe a couple, I don't know, if another player or whatever will come in and maybe shake a few things up. But
Gary Goals.
Maybe, it's got to be something.
Or maybe even like Kouassi when he's fit, just something a bit different. Even if you have to go long for the last 20 minutes or something a bit different. someone's mentioned there in the comments, like we went to Forest and played really well, didn't we? But then they're an attacking team, and it probably suits us more when teams are coming at us away from home. You look at Portsmouth, which is the kind of anomaly in those results. Whereas if they don't, we just don't seem to be able. CJ hasn't got space to run into. He's ineffective, and then other than Dembele will make a bit of a run, take 2 or 3 on, but it might peter out, and then other than that, you're looking and thinking, where's it going to come from?
And those games in between Christmas and New Year were just absolutely horrific, and it was just such a massive disappointment. You looked at them before, the fixtures came out, and nobody really wants to go to Burton and Port Vale away from home in between Christmas and New Year, and to not even get close to a result in either game was just pathetic, quite frankly.
Tim, how do we solve this away form? What's the problems and what's the solution?
I think we've got to have the ability to switch it up and have a plan B. Nick's talked about having being able to go a bit more direct. Most certainly at Barnsley, which is one of the two away wins we've had. Kouassi was fairly instrumental in that he was causing them all sorts of problems, and we were feeding off the second ball that he won. I do think we need to be more positive. I think we go to away games trying to contain and adopting an incredibly cautious approach. Generally, I'm not talking about any specific game, but just generally. And I went to Oxford and we didn't even try and do anything in the first half. We only started playing when we went 1-0 down, and then we managed to get an equaliser. Fleetwood, we went to there and for me showed them far too much respect, and looked like we were going to take a right pasting until we changed it. And I think, but we just seem to keep doing that. And I watch us away from home, and Portsmouth is probably the only exception to that. And I think we had a couple of lucky goals, to be honest, in that game. But I just think if I was the opposition manager, I'd know exactly how to play us. And these teams, we don't seem to be able to impose ourselves on them. Some of it, sometimes think it's personnel, but it's got to be an element of instruction from the manager and from the coaching staff as regards how they want them to approach those games away. Because this Blackpool team doesn't excite me at the moment. I think even with the home games, it feels like we're going through the motions a little bit, but at least with the home games, we seem to be able to find the back of the net, for want of a better word. I mean, the number of times we go away from home and don't even have a shot is incredible. And I think, how are you ever going to win a game without having a shot?
12 appearances, 12 goals, Tim, away. Yeah. 2 wins, 4 draws, 6 defeats.
We got 4 goals in one game.
God, yeah.
And 3 in another. So you take those 2 out of the equation, we've scored 5 goals in the other away games, apart from Fleetwood and Portsmouth. And thereby hangs a tail, doesn't it?
Let's just flick that around then. If you look at the home form there, I mean, what a difference. Played 15, won 10, drawn 2, lost 3, goals 4, 32. Essentially the same personnel.
It's weird. Literally chalk and cheese, isn't it? And I mean, to be honest, I don't want to get ahead too much on Saturday, but we actually seem to score some good goals at home that maybe mask the performances a little more. But for me, we're just incredibly defensive when we go away from home, and we're showing teams respect we shouldn't show respect to. We should just play our game. I've always had this thing with his management style. He worries about the opposition far too much for me, full stop. He did that even in the year we ended up going up, particularly the first half of the season. Incredibly concerned about the opposition, rather than because I look at I was watching the game on Saturday, and I was thinking, I know they were they were poor. But I was looking, I wouldn't have one of their players in our team. And there's quite a few games I've gone to this season, even when we've lost. And I actually thought I wouldn't actually have any of their players. I don't, they're not to the standard of ours. But we then go and lose. And the mindset isn't right.
I think you're right, Tim. I think it is the mindset as well, and because even at home, like I said before, that it was a Lincoln to a lesser extent, certainly Exeter on Saturday, a decent 2-0 win by all accounts. If you look at it from the outside, but as well as I do that anybody that's called Peterborough or Bolton or whatever would have put the foot down, and we would have been 4 or 5-0 up, no problem. They would have battered them. But we don't do that. We just ride games out. Even in Cheltenham, when we were 3-0 up, coasting, all of a sudden, 3-2, and we're panicking like hell. If they'd have got a goal in the last 15 minutes on Saturday, same would have happened. We've got to be a bit more positive. And I just think, I don't know where that comes from. It has to come from the top, basically. But equally, some of these players have got to take responsibility, of course. They've got, there's a few players in there who have got decent attacking threats about them, but they just seem to be, I don't know, hamstrung in some particular way, and I can't put my finger on it. But yeah, we're a little bit too easy, aren't we, at the moment? And we need to change it around. And hopefully, there might be a different mindset because time's running out. We've got three teams have got 2-3 games in hand on us, and before we know it, we could actually look adrift if they win their games as well. So we've just got to start turning this away form round sharpish.
How does he do that? Does he get a spiritual healer in like Eileen Drury?
Well, yeah, why not? Give him a shot of whiskey before the game starts or something. I don't know, just do anything.
What does Raggy call the assistants? I forgot what he calls them now.
The Boswell
brothers. But I think it comes back to having the right person in his ear during the game half the time. I think the right person making constructive comments about the way we might change things up that he trusts and that he's prepared to listen to because they've got that experience. I think they will influence the way we play. Yeah. And I don't think the current 2 assistants are of the type that can do that because they haven't got I'm no criticism of them as individuals, but they haven't got the pedigree of certain other people we've had at the club in the past who I think have imposed their experience on what happens particularly in game.
Well, look at Fleetwood away, Tim. The entire terrace was imposing the views on Critchley at half time. And he made the change that the whole away following wanted to see. And look at the result. Like, why can't we play like that second half at Fleetwood away? Why can't we play like when we were behind at Oxford? We've got the players to do it. They've got the ability.
Yeah, it's almost like we take the shackles off, but only when we have to.
Yeah. It's like we're playing in third gear. Look back to our record of never winning from being behind. Coventry away. It's over a year now. 14 months since we last won a game when from behind. So it's a mentality thing. It's like, Matt, I don't know if did you watch the Bristol Street Motors game? That was another game we could have thrown away. Cruising against Burton at home. They pulled one back and they were unlucky not to equalise. Same with Forest away.
Yeah, I was talking to some Southampton lads who were just up at the weekend for a bit of a stag do, and they've just gone on like some ridiculous 20 club record 20. I don't know if it's 20 games unbeaten or something, and it coincides with Calderwood coming in, and they are talking about their manager. Name escapes me now. Somebody will tell me who it is. And he's a great coach, but he needs that number 2. They're saying. Is it Russell Martin, wasn't it? I think that's their manager. Yeah. And, ensures the back 4 up. All of a sudden, the momentum's there and they start going forward and being a bit more attack-minded, blah, blah, blah. And you just think, this is it. This is the missing thing, perhaps. But until that missing thing comes in, we're never going to find out. And we'll find out too late, perhaps. But, yeah, there's a bit of, I don't know what the word is. I don't know. annoyance about the whole thing, really, isn't it? You know, we know that we're far better than what we can be, and we just seem to be
playing in third gear with the shackles on.
Well, it's affected the support from the stands as well, isn't it? Because I think that malaise that John spoke about at the beginning is you know, the level, the atmosphere of the ground has dipped unbelievably. From, I mean, you know, last season, even when we were struggling, it was loud and everybody got behind the team, and there's a lot of people just. I look around now when there's a bit of a chant, particularly on Saturday when a bit of a chant goes up. It's half-hearted and half don't join in anymore, where previously it was everybody. And I think it's a reflection of what they're seeing, what they're watching, and I don't think people are buying into what's going on. Critch ball is not exciting.
It's Christmas really knocked the stuffing out of a lot of people. Excuse the festive bird-related pun, but that destroyed a lot of people. I mean, Gaz in the comments he said he was suicidal after going to Cambridge, Burton, and Port Vale. Obviously, not that strong, Gaz, I'm sure, but you take the point that he's making, that it just sucked all the life out of everybody. And even though even if we've won 7 home games in a row, we're still four points adrift with all the teams and games in hand with us, and that we're only 4 points just of touching distance of 6th. We're completely out of the reach of the top 2, and the football, like you say, is pretty turgid. So there's gonna be a big wind of change needs to happen between the next 6 weeks for A, the atmosphere to lift, and B, for this away form to improve. And it has to improve, and it has to improve now.
And if the away form improves, I'm sure the atmosphere will improve at home as well, because everyone's got a bit of optimism then, haven't they?
We're something to play for. We want something to play for here, don't we? And not mid-table mediocrity. We want, even last season we were playing for something, because we were playing to try and stay in the division, and that kept the atmosphere charged. But I generally think, I think you made a good point for Matt. I think if we can start winning a couple of away games and keep the home form up, and all of a sudden we're back up to, I think we've only been on in like 6th once this season, haven't we? And then we've dropped back down again.
Been in 8th forever, haven't we?
Yeah, if we can actually push our way into the lower reaches of the playoffs, then all of a sudden people will start thinking there is something to play for, and it'll lift again. I love my away games, and to be honest, I can't be bothered, because I look at it and think I'm going. I'm umming and ahhing about going to Bristol on Saturday, but I really think it's like a good day ruined by football, isn't it? And that's how you end up then depressed, because you've got all that way and spent a few quid and watched the biggest load of crap that could possibly be served up.
Not just depressed, suicidal, Gaz.
Suicidal, Gaz. Well, I didn't go to Burton. I didn't go to Cambridge, and I didn't go to Port Vale, and a couple of different reasons for some of that. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'd have gone if I could have done.
Amax nailed it there. Playing not to lose in League One is not what any Pool fan wants to be about. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think he's just summed it up in a sentence when we've spoken 1,000 words and succinct and to the point.
Let's just have a quick look at the next few away games then. Let's see where we are next. January. So we've got Bristol Rovers away on the 20th. We always lose there. Always. Even when we were good. Then into February, Stevenage away. Normally you'd think that's a winnable game, but they're picking up results left, right and centre. Those two are dodgy, so we're probably going to lose and draw that. Cheltenham away, you'd think we're going to get something, and Peterborough will get beat. So, season over.
Then you've got Shrewsbury next. We never win it. Have we ever won at Shrewsbury?
You never know, though. If it was easy as that, and saying we'll win that and we'll lose that, then I'd be a rich man, because my accumulator would come in every week, and it never does. Who knows? We've got the big cup game on Wednesday night. I know it's a big ask, but if we got a result there, and could end the away hoodoo at Bristol Rovers, which, isn't somewhere we do particularly well at historically, but you never know. We're in a transfer window, a couple of signings, and it could all be different. It's not all doom and gloom. And even though it is a bit uninspiring and, like Matt said, functional at home, we're still not a million miles away. So it doesn't take much for it to turn a couple of results. Similarly, if we don't get them, then yeah, it's going to be a bit of a slog for the second half of the season. But who knows? There's still a couple of weeks of the window to go, isn't there? So,
just at this moment, then, quick around the room, are we going to make the playoffs? Yes or no, Tim?
No.
Matt?
No.
It's a no from me.
Yes, come on.
Well,
That's
that's about
more
right,
upbeat tonight with Gricey not being on.
Well, that's about it, though, isn't it? I reckon if you took a poll, probably 25% of the fan base would say yes, and 75 would say no. So I think you're probably up with the average there. But I think that's just because of the last, month especially. But yeah,
I think the other thing that comes out in the sort of strategic approach, the way we play games, particularly away from home, is that we seem to correlate possession with playing well, and it's been a feature of the post-match interviews, and it winds me up unbelievably. Where we talk about we had 62% possession, and the good teams have possession, and I'm watching the way we've played, and I thought when we played shot that I think he said that after Port Vale, if I remember rightly, it was either Port Vale or Burton.
He didn't. I had a Nick Smith style media blackout after that. He didn't say that.
No, he did. He said we had 60-odd% possession, and the good teams, all the teams at the top, you'll see have lots of possession. But it's where you have possession's important, not possession for possession's sake. So it wound me up because it seemed to reinforce this view I've got that we keeping the ball at all costs is more important than getting the ball forward. But the reality is that one of the games I think where we were most effective, albeit this was a home game, was Wigan, where they kept the ball the way that we do away from home. We had about 35% possession, but battered them. And sometimes you've got to take a risk and risk losing possession in order to win a game of football. Not just be predictable and recycle. How many times do we see that ball go from left to right, the centre back, then back again, then back again, then back again, and then eventually we hoof it. We play like a long diagonal, and then till Dembele and give possession away.
Yeah. You may as well just hoof it in the first place.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's to get his possession stats up. That's why he does it.
Yeah, well, but I think it's because they believe that's the way to win a game of football. But if that possession is all in your back third of the pitch, or even up to the halfway line, it means absolutely nothing. You're never going to win games with the ball in your own half.
What does everyone think of this? It's something that really does my head in, and it's crossed modern football. Getting everyone back into the box to defend set pieces and corners. You never, ever see a man left up now. And if we win the ball, there's always that chance, isn't there, of a big clearance upfield. Your man gets it, beats his man and scores. But it always puts you under pressure. And I'm sure there's something in the kind of the modern day Critchley style coaching manual that says never leave anyone up front.
It'll be statistically, if you have all 10 players back in the box, you're 0.25% less likely to concede a goal over 90 minutes than if you have one man up front. And therefore they'll say, right, well, we don't do that because statistically, that's what it'll be. It'll be some stat somewhere that says you'll concede less goals if you do that. But you won't score as many goals either, as you say, because you'll never be able to hit a team on the break.
I'll be paying a bit more attention to that and see where Dembele stands in the goal mouth area, because he's surely not going to win any header in our
front post.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe he stood on Grimmy's shoulders. I don't know.
Oh dear. Okay, let's move on. I've briefly mentioned it. Forest in the FA Cup 2-2. Tim, that was You've been talking about the teams that Critchley bangs on about possession of the ball. That was a game when we had about, I think, 27% possession, but we came out with a creditable 2-2 draw.
Yeah, I did a Smith actually. I was washing the cars. I can't remember if it was the day I saw you actually. No, but that was the week. That was between Christmas and New Year, wasn't it? I was washing the cars and just messing around, thinking, the game starts at 2:30. Came inside to turn the TV on, and we were 2-0 up. So I was kicking myself to say the least. It reminded me of the time I went on Paul Astley's coaches when we played Man City. And we got to the game 10 minutes later and we're 2-0 up and lost 4-2. So I felt a bit like that. I felt robbed that I hadn't seen us, in real time go 2-0 up. But yeah, I felt a bit frustrated with that game because I felt that we gave possession away. Certain player in particular gave possession away too easily, and it cost us. I think it cost us at least, probably on both occasions. I know the lad, I've forgotten which lad it was now, went down their left for the first of the 2 goals they got back, but we gave the ball away so cheaply up front. And it's a bit frustrating because when you've got that 2-0 lead, you want to go in and hold it, don't you, at half time? And but yeah, equally a creditable game and a game where we took our chances and reap the rewards. If you shoot, it's amazing. If you shoot, you score goals, don't you?
Which Kyle Joseph should have done at the death. Inexplicably decided to pass it when he should have shot. Although, to be fair to Kyle Joseph, he has impressed me. The last 2 or 3 games, he's been involved in a lot of goals all night, not scoring, but he's.
I thought that
he's right up there with his assists and his interplay with the other forwards.
I've been really, really impressed with his work rate. So yeah, perhaps he's just a bit cold when he came on. And listen, you see it and you think sometimes players think, they've got more time than they have and whatever it might be. But yeah, it was disappointing because it'd have been an exquisite win that won it away from home, and then so we can look forward to a Friday night trip somewhere.
I was flicking through the official Nottingham Forest tweets when we went 2-0 up, and the amount of Forest fans that are on there saying, "Is this our bogey side or what? Like, not these again."
It was a strong side as well, wasn't it? It wasn't like they made.
Haven't they got the Argentinian that scored the cup final, World Cup final winner and the Europa League winner?
Yeah, he set up Gabriel for our first goal, didn't he? Headed it to him. Yeah.
What about Gabriel then? It's the non-celebration. I would have celebrated personally. But it's a new fad, isn't it?
Yeah, I get it. Some players. I think it maybe depends on what terms you're left on as well. I think he was well liked there, wasn't he? So I can understand why he didn't. It was a very good goal. I mean, they were both good goals, and like I say, they put a strong lineup up. So although it's disappointing when you're 2-0 up to end up at 2-2, it's still a decent performance and result overall. Because they had a couple of I think it was Wood, wasn't it, who was sort of through on goal, and you're thinking, oh God, that's going to hit the back of the net. And thankfully, it went the wrong side of the post. And then we have that chance with Joseph at the end, and I think he's probably just needs a goal. It's like you guys. I've been impressed with him. The more he plays, I think he puts himself about really well. He makes some good runs as well. I was watching him on Saturday. There was a couple of times he made great runs between their defenders, but just didn't get the ball. And he's kind of, he was a bit frustrated. You could tell that if he'd just been threaded through, then he's in on goal. So I think once he gets one, he'll be up and running and he'll be okay.
Yeah, that's the problem, Nick. He's making these runs, but then we're passing it back to Jimmy Husband to go back to whoever at the back. So, yeah, we need a little bit more forward thinking, and I'm sure he'll score a few. I liked him the minute he kept, well, not literally the minute, but a few minutes into his debut at Bolton, and I think there's definitely a player there. We've just got to get the most out of him.
Yeah, and I think
it does create an interesting decision for Critch as well, because if he plays Gabriel, then we don't have CJ. In what he perceives to be his preferred position for him, which is right wing back. So I don't really see that you can play both. And it was interesting when he came on Saturday, obviously CJ switched to the left and actually looked quite good there, surprisingly.
Yeah, shocking though.
Yeah.
Let's talk BSM, Bristol Street Motors. We are now 2 games away from Wembley, beating Burton last week, and we're facing our old foes, the Horwich Wanderers, for a place in the semi-finals. Revenge for that famous Northern final defeat all those years ago at the Normid.
It scarred me, that did. Scarred me.
Russell Coughlin, rest in peace. With that penalty that's still now orbiting around planet Earth.
I generally, at the time, this was before we had our playoff victories. I don't even I think the playoffs had just started, but I generally thought that was our one and only chance to get to Wembley. First time since '53, and
it was a massive game though. Cash your mind back to it was massive, that game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Huge, which is bizarre considering how we derised this trophy.
Yeah, I think it was a full house at Bloomfield Road, wasn't it? If I remember rightly,
home and away.
Yeah,
it was 2 legs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Final.
It was the way first, wasn't it? It was the way first, and if Coughlin scored that penalty, because I think it was did we win it by 1 at home, but it wasn't enough because they'd won by 2.
I remember they were on the pitch at the end, weren't they? And it was just like you say, Tim. It was you're just thinking, are we ever going to get there? You know, not knowing that, like John said, we'd end up kind of. It'd be interesting if we did get through and got to the final, how many we would take. You know, whether people, you know, if we've not picked up a bit more in the league, whether people would bother with it. I think I'd go, but it will be interesting to see. It probably wouldn't have quite the same excitement as first time round when we hadn't done it before.
It'd just be a day out, I think, Nick, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Thing is, as well, I mean, it could be. I don't know what it is. I think it would be 60 or 80 quid a ticket or something daft, won't it? So,
I mean, the prize money's pretty decent. You know, if you win the thing, it's a decent payday, but we'll see. We can get past Bolton first because you know, they're a decent side, aren't they?
And the current holders.
And
Evo. Yeah, this is right. James Dyson. Do you invent Hoovers for a living, James? Steve Thompson scored a pen at Bloomfield Road to win on aggregate. I seem to remember that. Possibly.
I always remember thinking if Coughlin had scored that penalty, we'd have gone to Wembley. And I can't remember. I had a vague recollection. We won 2-1 at home, and we'd lost away when we would have drawn if Coughlin had scored. Because the old Burton Park, wasn't it, where they had the big terrace? They had the big terrace going down the length of the ground, didn't they? A little bit like. Wasn't like Burnley's, a bit more like Carlisle's, wasn't it, with a stand above it, seating area above it, and we were behind what was originally a huge away end that probably held 10,000, that was cut in half with this, for the younger listeners, cut in half by this Normid supermarket that literally sat inside the ground, and Russell Coughlin hit it, or legend has it, he hit it with his penalty. I think that penalty's still on YouTube somewhere.
For the younger viewers and listeners out there, it's difficult to comprehend that this was actually a thing in a football stadium. Just for anyone who doesn't know, Bolton's away terrace was split in half. They sold off half of the terrace, and there was an actual supermarket building built on the terrace. It's just mind-boggling in this day and age to believe such a thing could happen.
You wait until there's an Aldi on Back Henry Street.
There'll be an Aldi there before.
Built into the East Stand.
Exactly.
That's what it's going to be.
In
it's going to be an Aldi, isn't it?
But just on the BSM, it'll be interesting to see what Critch does for, you know, the Bolton game, and if we got through that for the next one, whether, because he's tended to sort of rest quite a few first teamers, hasn't he? And obviously now Thompson's gone and Tharm's gone. They would have been probably playing. You know, whether he goes really strong for it or includes some of the fringe players or even youth team.
When you've got, you know, I mean, it's not Premier League money, is it? But when you got 50,000, 100,000 up for grabs, you're not really going to be playing Dom Thompson anymore, are you? Or whoever the case may be.
I thought it was more than that for the winners.
It's got to be more, sure.
I think it's more. It's like an accumulation, though, isn't it? I think you get
It was
like
50 grand for the other night, wasn't it, or something?
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
But, what I'm saying is the money's there to be sort of Simon Sadler or whoever is going to be saying, look, it'd be quite nice if you could give this a bit of a go. And by that, you're going to be playing your stronger 11, aren't you, really? You could play, obviously, the likes of Marv and Andy Lyons or whoever, but, you're not going to be playing the Doug Tharms of this world anymore. Obviously, he's gone, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Plus, it's Bolton. They're going to bring a few, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there'll be a bit of an edge to it, and I think we'll probably all go to this game, won't we? I'll go.
Yeah, I think so.
The overall prize pot, this is off Fleetwood's website, actually, so there's one that come up, is £3 million. Doesn't say how much the winner gets, unfortunately.
Should we really be using something associated with Fleetwood Town and finance as a source of truth?
Good point. What happens if you win the EFL Trophy? It does say, it says in this, October 23, £100,000 for winning the final.
Fair enough. Not as much as I thought.
What about the gate receipts? Split, I guess.
Yeah, that might be the gate receipts might be on top, might they?
Okay, let's move on to what we saw at the weekend, which is Blackpool 2, Exter 0. We won't give this the fine-tooth comb effect of what we normally do. There was a lot on. Someone was telling me about everyone was getting frisked beforehand. Frisk-gate, I've put, or even old fellas and young people being excessively frisked before the match. Obviously, I wouldn't because I was in the corporate day.
Well, I don't get it with the Moretti, but I think the thing is, you give somebody a high-vis jacket and they become like a little Hitler, don't they? So the reality of the situation is probably the club, and BST have had a little bit of feedback from the club today because we've been asking questions about it. That they're told to do one thing, but they actually do another. I mean, quite why you need to, there's talk of, children and young adults, some of whom got some disabilities, being frisked in circumstances that are clearly, in my view, inappropriate. And they're targeting the wrong areas. I mean, if you've got somebody going into the south at 1:30, this is one example. I won't name names, but the example of somebody going in at 1:30 with autism and they're being frisked. What planet does anybody think somebody going in the south at 1:30 is going to be hiding pyrotechnics or whatever? Or hot food seems to be an issue that they've got a problem with as well, doesn't it? Anybody bringing in food into the stadium all of a sudden seems to be a problem, but with a lack of communication around it, that might explain why that's suddenly a thing when for the last 25 years it hasn't been. And I can understand why the club don't want people taking hot food into the stadium, but you communicate it beforehand and you make sure that people know about it and it's dealt with appropriately rather than you just met at the turnstile with you not coming in. It winds people up.
I think it does wind people because you're instantly sort of treated like a bit of a second-class type of citizen, aren't you, really? And yeah, I understand that with the recent past, there's been issues with pyros and one or two other bits and pieces. But, like you say, it's who they're targeting. I think they could probably, quite frankly, have half a dozen people with a decent pair of eyes would know who potentially might need frisking in certain areas of the ground. But that's just standard anywhere.
There's a lack of common sense as well. This is earlier on in the season, but there's a bloke who's blind goes up to the nearest turnstile to go in, which isn't his turnstile, and they won't let him in. And then when it's pointed out to them he's blind, apparently the answer is, well, how am I meant to know? Well, he has got a white stick. It's just. There is some jobs where stuff goes on, and I don't think necessarily it's on instruction. All of it's on instruction from the club. I do think there's this high-vis jacket. I've got a bit of power, and I'm going to use it mentality going on. And it's just, I keep, every time I go in the Moretti, I go in there every single week, and at half time, and it's the same guy on the gate, and he demands to show me the pass every time. He knows 100% that I go in every week, but he show me this. It was like, Jesus Christ. But that's small fry compared with what seems to be going on the main gates, and it seems to have just happened overnight. But there's been no real dissemination of information. Look, this is the position. This is why we're doing it, and be prepared for the fact that it is going to be a more active frisking. It happens at some other grounds, but it's when you're not expecting it. I don't think...
You say, Tim, as well, it could be, there's been a few incidents, hasn't there, where the FA have been looking at stuff and we've had fines and whatever. So like you say, just a communication to say, look, on the back of that, because they've probably got to be seen to be doing something to stop things happening, whether it's being chucked on the pitch or whatever, and just put some comms out about it so as people are aware. And like you say, look at who you're frisking and when and in which area of the ground.
Yeah. I can't remember anything coming from the south, anything coming from the west. The problem area is mainly A and B block in the north when things hit the pitch. That's where you focus your energies, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they need to go over the top with it, but there has been a problem there, and that's why. So I just don't understand this. The colouring. Anybody who's going in the ground at 1:30 is not the demographic of the person who's going to be causing a problem of the type you're trying to eradicate. It just isn't, is it? They're the people who are going in there because they want to watch the warm-ups and things like that. They're not going to be chucking stuff. It's the lads who've been in the pub till as a demographic, the lads who've been in the pub till 2:45, then hit the ground and do silly things.
Yes, Lee. There was a chant there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
You wear a yellow jacket, you're Right, on to the game then. Routine victory. A victory we should be, a scoreline we should be putting out against Exter, extremely poor side. We even did it with a penalty miss from Jordan Rhodes. Uncharacteristically sloppy penalty, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Not like him at all. I thought he was quite quiet all afternoon. But then he has been brilliant for us. So I suppose you can forgive him the odd game. He knew he was very clever in with the penalty as well. That just knocking the ball to the side and knowing that there's going to be, and it was a penalty all day long. He's just used his experience there to get it. And you're thinking, right, the ball's going to be in the back of the net. And it was just a bit telegraphed, wasn't it? It wasn't a great pen, and keeper's dive to his left and saved it. And then you wonder at that point, oh, is that going to be the moment? Because they weren't particularly threatening or anything, but at the same time, they would have been happy with a point and weren't really pushing numbers up the field, which when teams do that, it doesn't always make for a great spectacle, does it? Because there's kind of only one team with the possession and trying to do things, but there isn't a great deal of space. But thankfully, Albie Morgan stepped up with an absolute worldie.
I think that was what was really encouraging about us in that particular sort of period, is that, we could have easily just sort of dropped our heads and thought, oh, God, that's it. But we did carry on. We were always on the front foot. And like you're saying, Exeter were just happy to come with a mentality of thou shalt not sort of pass. And, fortunately, we were good enough to get past them, and it was like you say, I love the goal by Albie Morgan, and he's fast becoming a bit of a favourite in that midfield position now, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of him, because he's definitely got a bit of something about him, and the more he shoots, the more successful he seems to become. So it was a great goal, and it was depending on where you were at in the stands. Of course, we were in the north behind the goal. We got a really good view of it, which is unusual for a goal that's scored in the south stand.
We had a couple now, because Norburn
a
couple of weeks ago was very, very similar, wasn't it? in the way that you could see it. And I think we mentioned Josie before. He worked hard in the build-up. Nice little knock from Dembele into his feet, and he hit it with aplomb, didn't he? I've got to say, just going back to Exeter,
side-footed from outside the box, Tim, which is quite
and with real power as well, wasn't it? So, I've just going back to Exeter. I think they were one of the most unambitious teams I've seen come to Bloomfield Road this year. I don't know quite what the game plan was, because I couldn't see how it was ever going to succeed, because they didn't make it. I'm struggling to think of any shots of note that they had. Most certainly, it was probably one of the most comfortable games we've had all season. And if I've got a frustration about it, is that it takes two great strikes to win the game, doesn't it? Where with the team who's showing that little ambition, you almost expect, or you would expect that we could go on and just almost like score some normal goals alongside the really good ones, because the really good ones were like pulled out of nowhere. And so you start thinking, where the bread and butter goals come in? And I think we should have won. If I've been critical, we should have, maybe got 3 or 4.
And that's our frustration, though, isn't it? That's earlier on about, Peterboroughs and Boltons of this world would put 4 or 5 past these sort of teams, whereas we just sort of manage the game, and that's it, and it's not, it's not getting off out of our seats, is it really? So
didn't get me off my seat. I watched the majority of the second half from the Matthews suite. I was just chatting grassroots to a couple of people that I knew in there. It was just, we're keeping an eye on the game, but it was just drab. Zamax had done a drab 2-0 victory, and Mark's put a good shout in there. The 2 strikes by Albi were so out of context from the rest of the game. Is that fair, Nick?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not going to say it was edge of the seat stuff. It was, pragmatic, formulaic, call it what you will. I suppose, though, when you've only got one team really trying, though, if they're tearing up the pitch and then we've got space to put CJ in it could have been a bit more exciting. But it's still 3 points at the end of the day, isn't it? And if the penalty had gone in, it's 3-0. I saw a stat before, actually, about teams that had scored 3 goals or more this season, and we're right up there. So although we're, it's not swashbuckling, we're going to score 1 more than you. Certainly at home, it is effective, without being, massively exciting, I suppose.
And I think we would be more excited. I think if we had some of those away points that we've basically just forfeit without even trying, it would be more exciting, because it would mean more. Because if we were in 4th or 5th or even a bit higher, then we would be trying to suck that ball in the net, and perhaps we would feel a little bit different about the outcome of the game. And hopefully we will get there, because we're good if we win on Saturday and then go down to Stevenage, who are obviously slightly above us in the league, and beat them. All of a sudden, we might and keep going. We might be in the mix, and we will start to care, for want of a better word, about the outcome of games. Where at the moment, I don't feel like I'm invested in what's going on. It does very much feel like going through the motions. And some of the lads I go with just aren't turning up to games, and even though they've already paid and whatever, and it's
I feel the same, Tim. I think everyone does. It's like walking out afterwards. You're like walking under the West Constant. It's like you're shrugging your shoulders almost after the win, because you know what's coming at the away game, and if you're not picking up points away from home, you're not making the playoffs. It's as simple as that. I don't think he is capable of changing. I think he's too arrogant and set in his ways to do something different, or to take the handbrake off. That's why we're going to finish 8th. Aren't we?
I think we're going to have the longest run ever of being 8th without ever moving a position.
Yeah.
Because we're about 5 or 6 points from 9th, aren't we? So we're sort of, unless we start picking some results up away, we literally are going to stay 8th for the rest of the season.
I saw someone, I think it was on Twitter, put if all the teams above us win their games in and around us and we're 12th, that was a stark for that reality. Yeah. Yes, Lee, I was chatting to Chris Nay, by the way. Oh, he's pissed up chairman. Yeah, I was Lee.
I was going to say, fortunately, it doesn't normally work out that every team wins all their games in hand.
It doesn't, does it?
But we've got to be in control of our own destiny. And the only way we can do that is start picking up points away from home. Otherwise, we are destined to be 8th or lower, aren't we?
Mm. Tom in the comments advises Critch to not do the fist anymore until we win an away game. I think that's a good shout. So fisting, yes or no?
God,
I have to leave before it comes over now. I can't. It winds me up that much. And I think there's quite a few in the north of that mindset who just say, "No, I've got to go before he starts." It's not a good look, is it, when you're
half the stands empty
in mid-table mediocrity
and losing to Port Vale away 3-0? Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. Nick, fisting, yes or no? Are you a fan?
Well, I don't hang around for it, but I'm not in the north anyway, so I'm not on the receiving end. I think first time round, and it was all a bit new, wasn't it? And we were getting, on a roll that second half of the season, got promoted, and even the championship, when wins weren't coming as often, everybody loved it, didn't they? And now, like you say, when you go into the away game next week, and the chances are it's going to be a defeat, it doesn't really mean as much at home. And I do think, part of this kind of sort of pedestrian style of play, we are losing a bit of the atmosphere. And I'd gone before we did it, but I saw it. I think the club put it up on one of the tweets, and the ground, the north's getting towards. There's not that many people staying behind for it anymore, is there? So I think it's losing its impact probably. And everybody does it nowadays, don't they?
Yeah. Mm. Mark GT, no festing flays, Dars with less before the fisting. Cringe. Lee doesn't like it. The Grice Reap has appeared. The fisting is cringe.
He daren't, I think he means.
He aren't doing it down at South. What's he mean there? Oh, right. Okay.
He can't do it at the South.
Sounds a bit like him, actually.
It's got all Bristolian on it.
Vale, he daren't cone closer than 40 yards.
Yeah, I noticed that actually. I don't think anybody stepped inside the area, did they, on that particular one? Yeah, and then there was still like 15 yards after the dead ball line to the stand. So yeah,
so it's a big no to the fisting. Hopefully we see the back of that, like we saw the back of Glad All Over. I noticed Port Vale play Glad All Over when they score. Yeah, I heard it 3 times. I'm glad that's not in there anymore. Right,
anyway, doesn't it? It gives you a shiver.
Yeah. What they need to do is, sorry, just to finish off on this one, is do what I think it's primarily in Germany, when all the team come out and do like they come to the stand, don't they, where all their ultras are, but they also come to the stand when they get battered and they take it like men. And that would be interesting if we adopted something like that instead of just fisting for home games.
Yeah, they need to take it like men.
Take it like men.
Take the fisting like a man.
And some of those Germany games, they really get some stick, don't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'll tell you off air anyway. Go on, carry on.
Right, just before we head off, players in, players out. Obviously, the January transfer window has opened. 2 players in. Well, not in. Jordan Rose obviously staying. Big plus for us, isn't it? That could be the difference between scraping the playoffs or mid-table obscurity.
I think that was probably, if we did no other business this window, that was the one bit of business that every Blackpool fan would want us to have done. I was keeping a sort of close eye on whether Huddersfield, and I think they'd signed a striker the week before, which was a positive sign. And then it was just a case of whether we could, we could keep him. And I'd like to think probably the player, I know ultimately it's down to Huddersfield, but I would imagine he had some say in it as well, in terms of, look, I don't want to come back and sit on a bench. I'm enjoying my football. I'm scoring goals. So, he'd want to stick around. And then we'll see at the end of the season, what happens, because he's one of the most natural finishers we've had at the club in a long time. So, like you say, John, it could be the difference between getting into those playoffs and not, if he wasn't with us. So it was good news that he's staying on loan for the second half of the season. And then the other bit that everybody was looking at was obviously Rob Apter, wasn't it? And what was going to happen there. And he got recalled and then signed an extension, and then he's gone back out again. And there's a few people saying they'd have rather seen him stick around for us. But I think overall, you've got to look at it and think, how much would he play for? As in, in our current system as well, he's not going to play at right wing back, and I wouldn't want him to. He probably doesn't get in ahead of Dembele. So there's no point in him sitting on the bench for us. I don't know if he's cut tied from the EFL Trophy, so he might not be able to play in that. So he probably wouldn't get a lot of minutes with us. So I think for the player and ultimately for us, it's more beneficial that he goes back to Tranmere, where he will play another, whatever it is, 19, 20 games between now and the end of the season. Score a few more goals. His confidence will be sky high, and he'll come back a better player for it than he would be being in and around our first team, but probably not playing. There's absolutely no point in going back into a development squad, and that's for sure. So I think overall, it's the best thing for him for now. And then don't get me wrong, I want to see him in a Blackpool shirt, but I don't want to see him sat on the bench. So I think it's the best thing that he goes back there and plays regularly.
Yeah.
In a system that obviously suits him, because he's flourishing there, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think it's probably 22 at the start of next season, I think, possibly, which is an age where he should be pushing through the first team football, if not before, obviously, if you're good enough. But yeah, I think he'll benefit from staying at Tranmere, and I think we'll ultimately benefit, obviously, signing him on a 3-year deal, I think, possibly. We've obviously got higher hopes for him, so it all makes sense to me.
I've noticed there we seem to be linked with Dan Gore at Man United and Niall Ennis at Blackburn. I think Niall Ennis is he a midfield player? I think
he was at Plymouth last season, wasn't he? I think they only signed him in the summer.
Right.
I think he's had a couple of injuries, so he's not really forced his way into there.
I think Dan Gore's quite a young lad, isn't he? He's about 19 or something. So, but I think I see us probably bringing in somebody. Whether we need a. We've spoken about this before. If we're going to bring a lone player in, it needs to be somebody who's going to have a real influence on the team. I would suggest, the way Rhodes has done. To be fair, now whether we're able to get someone like that, I don't know. But I'd like to see us try and add a little bit of creativity in the team. Dembele does that. To be fair, doesn't he? But yeah, whether a really good, strong midfield player could make a big difference to us, I think.
Well, we had Weir, didn't we? And I think we all thought at the start of the season, after how he did for Morecambe last season, he was in double figures. He had 10 goals and 6 assists. So there was high hopes there that he was going to be that. I always compare people to Paul Groves, who'll get you into double figures over the course of the season. And it just didn't work, did it? So again, it's the right thing for him to go back. Brighton aren't going to gain anything with him sitting on our bench. It's just trying to find someone who's going to fit into the system. Because if you could get half a dozen goals from the centre of the park between now and the end of the season, on top of Rhodes staying in form, again, that could be the difference, couldn't it, from just missing out on the playoffs or getting in there. And we've brought the lad in from Middlesbrough as well, haven't we, Coulson, as a wing back, which we're going to insist on playing wing backs. I suppose it makes sense that we've got somebody who can play in that position as his natural position, rather than trying to shoehorn people into it.
Was it a surprise to see him thrown straight into the starting 11?
Possibly. I mean, I like Andy Lyons, and he wasn't even on the bench on Saturday, was he? From memory, so I'm not.
I think he might be going out.
Do you think?
Yeah, I don't. I might be wrong. I think the only justification, because he's not injured, as I understand it, I think the only justification for leaving him out is that he's literally giving a player a rest and then going to play them Wednesday, and because he's got these 4 biggish games over the course of the next couple of weeks, he's literally going to bring players in and bring players out that can slot in for each other. So I think if Lyons starts Wednesday, which I don't think he will, then that'll obviously be the policy. But I genuinely, I think we might find. I think bringing in a left wing back when we've just got Gabriel back and we've got Lyons, we've got Dale, and you've got to fit CJ in there somewhere as well if you're going to continue with this system. Suggest somebody's on the way out, and it's not Gabriel.
And obviously Thompson's gone, hasn't he? And again, I think that's the best thing for everyone concerned, isn't it? You know, he's not playing for us, other than the odd game here and there, sort of like the EFL Trophy, or he might make the bench. And he's very much obviously a confidence player. And I think, you know, if you're Dom Tom and you know that, even if I think it was against Forest Green, wasn't it, where he got man of the match, you know that even if you had a good game, you're not going to be featuring the following Saturday. You know, for your confidence, it won't be great. And you know, he has got a mistake in him. So I think that was the right thing. And Doug Tharm, again, you know, only really featuring in the EFL Trophy games, not going to be in the first team squad, barring probably 2 or 3 injuries to defend, you know, to the centre half. So made sense for his is a permanent, isn't it? I think Thompson was loan and Tharm's a permanent. So, you know, it frees up a couple of wages, doesn't it, for incomings, hopefully.
Steve Jenkins just said, I think Lyons isn't one of his favourites, and he does have favourites, and it can be the only explanation for his tactics and player choices. I personally will be really annoyed if Lyons goes out, but I think Tim's right. I think the writing is on the wall there.
I think
he can't be happy. He can't be happy.
Sorry, I was going to say, you know, this is the guy at the end of last season who scored half a dozen goals or whatever from right back.
Yeah,
he looked like the player that was the player that he was touted to be, the next best thing to come out of Ireland, and he's started his international career just about as well. Looked every inch a championship player, and at the close season, I was saying to players, I was saying to people that I know, this is the player that will get us up this year, because I think he just tear the League One apart, and he hasn't had a sniff. And I know he's had a few personal issues and all the rest of it, but that aside, he's just not been part of the squad, generally speaking. So, yeah, I think favourite is the word, that he just doesn't fit, or I don't know. It's so weird, you know, because I think he's a really good player. And again, he's probably a confident player, a confidence player. And if your manager hasn't got confidence in you, you're not maybe going to perform as you're able and capable of doing. So, yeah, I fear, like you guys have just said, that he may be on his way somewhere else, really. And I'd be hacked off. And now, whether he'll go to a lower end championships side, I just can't see him staying in League One. I think he's just still too good for this division. I can't see we'll be happy for him to be potentially, I don't know if he'll play against us, but why would we send him off to, I don't know, Peterborough or Stevenage or something? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. We lost you, John.
Can't hear you, John. Are you on mute?
So, yeah, I was just saying, it'd be interesting just to see Lyons get a run of games in his actual preferred position of right back / wing back. And it just seems a bit weird to me that CJ starts there. He's nailed on starter, and no matter what happens, CJ plays right wing back, and we've got Gabriel in there.
He hardly ever gets substituted either. So when there is a substitution,
I'm not digging him out, but it's
no.
He just seems to be undroppable, which is a strange one. Yeah, we'll watch this space then. That's it, I think, with Andy Lyons. Right, just before we go, we've got Forest on Wednesday night, haven't we? Is it a big game? It used to be in the past, the third round FA Cup League.
Used to be massive, didn't it?
Yeah. It was a big game until we touched on it earlier that the next game's potentially on a Friday night in Bristol or West Ham or something, which just makes a mockery of the whole bloody FA Cup, and it's no wonder that the attraction of the FA Cup is diminishing when you're asking fans to go on a Friday night halfway around the bloody country.
It's for TV abroad, apparently, isn't it? Not even in this country.
It's disgusting. It's an absolute joke. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke.
I think, yeah, and regardless of who gets through, even if it's Forest against West Ham in the next round, is that a massive game for people abroad to watch? I don't know. It's just like you say, Matt. It's become a bit when they're playing the games over a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It devalues a bit. I mean, there is still, I suppose, it's the FA Cup. It's under the lights, Bloomfield Road. We've not got a great record in midweek games in recent times, have we?
Great record against Forest, though, Nick, haven't we?
We have. That's the thing, and I'm sure we'll be up for it. Ticket sales don't seem great at the moment, but it's probably just. I mean, like I'll be going, but we haven't got our tickets yet, and I suspect there's probably a lot of people in the same boat. They'll be getting them over the next, day or two, and there'll hopefully be a decent atmosphere.
So I was just reading the comment there. Burton have gone 2-0 up against Derby.
It is
at Derby as well.
Is that in the league?
Yeah.
Wow. Has DT scored a brace?
It's a big Derby game for them as well, isn't it? As in I suppose it's a little bit like us and Fleetwood, isn't it? In that they're quite small and not a traditional rival, but they are obviously very closely. Distance-wise, they're quite close to each other, aren't they?
2-2 it is now.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with the FA Cup this year. I mean, obviously, we had this situation with rounds 1 and 2 that weren't televised anywhere at all, which again, part of the magic of the FA Cup always was seeing these teams come from non-league and get pitted against league opposition. And they used to make a big thing, didn't they, about particularly BBC. They really went into the grassroots side and went to grounds and got introduced the tea lady and all that business, which was actually quite interesting to see a club who'd managed to get through to the first round proper for the first time and perhaps playing, an half-decent side who were on the uppers a bit, like, say, Sunderland or something as an example. So it was like, real sort of David and Goliath stuff. But that's all been stripped away this year. I mean, you couldn't watch it literally anywhere. I mean, even on IPTV, there was nothing. It was almost like it was whitewashed out. And I don't know what the rationale behind that was. Almost from the FA's perspective, they'd almost be better giving it away or giving it. I don't know whether they were holding out for a price they couldn't get or what, or whether everybody knows why it wasn't on. But it needs to be seen, doesn't it? And when it's not seen, I think most certainly, I don't think people have got invested in the FA Cup in the same way this year, even as against in previous seasons, because of that lack of coverage. That's my take on it.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Even the day itself on the final day isn't like what it used to be, is it? I remember Brian Kilcline going to a wedding before the FA Cup final just to see some.
We were on in the first round, weren't we? We were on in the first round, weren't we, on BBC? And I think they've done I don't know, is it split between BBC and ITV now? I can't remember. There was, I think Portsmouth were on away at Chesterfield on a Sunday afternoon, but I get your point, Tim. It's perhaps not got the coverage it did have. And again, I think it's probably just because there's just so much football now, isn't there? We're all old enough to remember, like you just said, when the FA Cup final day, 9:00 in the morning, BBC or ITV, it was on right the way through the day. That's all that was on those two channels. And you sat in front of the TV from 9:00 till 5:00, watching all of the build-up and all of that. And now it might be on the same day as Premier League games or something. It just hasn't got the same.
I mean, to be fair, then there was only literally
that's all it was.
Three live games, wasn't there?
Yeah.
There was the FA Cup final, there was the European Cup final, and there was the the England under 18s, the England schoolboys. It wasn't it?
Mm.
They were like 3 live games you used to get. So everybody ate it up, didn't they? Like, so I apologize, I'd forgotten we'd been on live with Bromley. But I just generally there doesn't seem to be anything like the same number of FA Cup matches shown in rounds 1 and 2. But yeah, I mean, I used to love those days. But you can understand why that is diluted because of the fact there's now saturation football. But this dividing the third round up. I mean, if you're going to pick a game to play on a Friday to show on TV on a Friday night, that's fair enough because obviously these TV stations do put money in. But there's literally divided them up equally, haven't they? Mm-hmm. I think there's like 5 on a Friday night, 5 on a Saturday. It might be 6. Same on a Sunday, and I didn't even realise they're on Monday as well if they are. But I mean, how the hell are we meant to get numbers down to West Ham or Bristol City if we get through? It's just, we'd normally have taken quite decent numbers, particularly to West Ham.
On a Saturday, it's like a few thousand going in it.
But it's going to be half, if not quarter of that number, because you're straight away a day off work, kids out of school, if you want to take kids, and most people aren't going to do that, and fight your way down to London on a Friday as well.
And if you do get through, and it's West Ham, you've missed the last train back, haven't you? So it's an overnight job. You're all of a sudden you're looking at a couple of £100
per head.
But we've got to beat Forest first, haven't we?
Yeah. Now listen, we've got to get there in numbers, haven't we, and get behind the lads because they did pull out a result away, and I think we owe it to them. It's £15. It's going to be a bit chilly, but clear, and it's not going to be chucking it down or anything. So wrap up. Let's get there and give them a bit of support. I got my ticket today.
Yeah, got mine.
Need to get mine. I'll get mine today, tomorrow. Right, finally, just before we go, Bristol Rovers away next Saturday. A ground we rarely come away with anything at. Is this going to be the game that turns our season round?
Well, it's my first trip to Bristol Rovers, so that means it'll be our first win away at Bristol Rovers, undoubtedly. Never been. I've been to Bristol City a couple of times, but I've never been to Bristol Rovers. One of those grounds that never seems to fall right in terms of fixtures or whatever.
I went
doing things at the weekend.
Oh gosh.
Of course, yeah, they were at Bath, weren't they, for a few years? Yeah.
When they had Marcus Stewart.
Marcus Stewart. Yeah.
And I went there. I can't remember whether we won now, whether we drew. I think we might have drawn. But I've seen them at Bath, but never at their ground. So if I'm tempted to go Saturday, it'll be for that reason.
It's a very away game, going to an away game in Bath, Tim.
I wouldn't look at a place with the chinos on, would I? That's the thing.
No, you'll fit
they're
right
on Cheltenham, and I'm home
with a toga on.
I'm going to go 2-1 win. And like you say, John, it's not somewhere we've historically done very well at, but it's time to end the away hoodoo.
Matt?
I'll settle for any away win, but I'll go for the same. Why not? 2-1 last minute, Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph's gonna undo his own scoring hoodoo, our away hoodoo, and we're gonna win 2-0. To close the show off, Tim. How would you go?
I can't really show any negativity set against the sea of positivity that's coming at me out of the screen. So I'm going to have to go for a cheeky 1-0 win.
Who's scoring?
Dembele.
Dembele or Dembele? No, Dembele.
Dembele or Dembele. I say Dembele. I'm Lancashire.
Chizzy says Dembele, so I'm saying Dembele. Everyone else. Okay, right, just before everyone goes, if you're watching this on YouTube, do like this video and do subscribe to the channel. Helps us grow and all that stuff. We do have a Patreon support program. If anyone wants to join, patreon.com/SeasidersPod. You get extra content every now and then, and you get to join our WhatsApp group, which is a good laugh. Quite a few in there already. So, if you want to join up, please do so. £3 a month helps us pay our bills and all that. Anyway, what's meant to be said is thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for downloading. And up the pool. Come on Wednesday.
Come on.
Up the pool.
Up the pool.